She was standing in the kitchen doorway when I walked in from work, just standing there, not moving, one hand braced against the frame like she needed it to hold herself up. And in her other hand, she was holding something small, something lacy, something that definitely did not belong to her. I didn't even understand what I was looking at for a second. I was tired. I had my laptop bag over one shoulder, my keys still in my hand, and my brain was still stuck somewhere on the highway replaying a meeting that ran 40 minutes too long. And then my eyes focused, and my stomach dropped straight through the floor. She looked at me. Just looked at me. Her face was so still it scared me more than if she'd been screaming. "I found this," she said quietly, "in your jacket pocket, the gray one, the one you wore to Chicago last month." I stared at it. A bra, a woman's bra, pale pink, small, definitely not hers, not even close to her size. "I'm not accusing you of anything," she said, and her voice was so carefully controlled it broke my heart a little. "I just need you to explain to me, where did you get it from?" And I opened my mouth, and nothing came out, because I had absolutely no idea. I stood there looking from my wife to that bra and back again, and I had nothing. No explanation, no memory, no story. Just silence, and the sound of the refrigerator humming, and my wife's eyes slowly filling with something I never wanted to see there. And that's when I realized someone wanted my wife to believe I was cheating. If you're new here, please subscribe before we go any further, because this story goes places I genuinely did not see coming, and I want you there for all of it. And drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Okay, let me take you back. My wife and I have been married for 11 years. 11 years. Her name is Claire. And if you saw us at a backyard barbecue, you'd probably think we were one of those couples. The ones who still laugh at each other's jokes. The ones who still hold hands in the car without thinking about it. And honestly, you wouldn't be wrong. We had our rough patches like everybody does. A couple of years ago, we went through a stretch that was hard, mostly money stuff and the stress of me changing jobs, and there were months where we were just roommates, more or less. But we worked through it. We went to 2 different counselors before we found one we both liked, and we sat in that room and said the uncomfortable things out loud, and we came out the other side closer than before. That's what made that moment in the kitchen so devastating. Not just the bra, not just the accusation she was carefully not making. It was the fact that I looked at her face and I could see her trying to trust me, actively fighting against what her eyes were telling her. And I couldn't give her a single reason to win that fight, because I genuinely could not remember where that bra came from. I went to Chicago for a work conference in October. 4 days at a hotel downtown, client dinners, panel discussions, the whole thing. I wore that gray jacket twice. I know I wore it to the conference dinner on the second night because I spilled something on the sleeve and spent 10 minutes in the bathroom trying to blot it out. I was with colleagues. I came back to the room alone each night. I called Claire every evening around 9. I was not with anyone. I know that with complete certainty. So how did a stranger's bra end up in my jacket pocket? That night after the kids went to bed, Claire and I sat at the kitchen table and talked. Or tried to. She wasn't cold exactly, but she was measured. Everything she said was measured. She asked me about the Chicago trip again, slowly, carefully, and I told her everything I could remember. The flight, the hotel, the people I was with, the dinners. And I watched her face as I talked, and I could see her filing things away. And I didn't know if what I was saying was helping or hurting. "Do you remember putting anything in that jacket pocket?" she asked. "My phone sometimes. Maybe my room key." "That's all?" "That's all I remember." She nodded slowly. "Okay. Just okay." And then we left it there. Didn't talk about it again that week. But you know how it is when something like that sits between 2 people? It doesn't go away just because you stop saying words about it. It was there at breakfast. It was there when she handed me my coffee. It was there in the half-second pause before she answered when I texted to say I was on my way home. Our son Nathan is 9. Our daughter Lily is 6. They didn't notice anything, or at least I hope they didn't. I kept things as normal as I could. I coached Nathan's Saturday soccer practice. I made Lily's favorite macaroni on Thursday night. I did all the normal things while feeling like I was walking across ice and listening very carefully for the sound of cracking. And then about 4 days after the bra incident, I got a text from my brother Ryan. Ryan is 3 years younger than me. We're close, but in that way, brothers are close when they live 30 minutes apart and both have busy lives. Close in theory, catch up in person maybe once a month. He texted me to say he was in the neighborhood and could he stop by, which was a little odd because Ryan usually calls. He doesn't usually just swing by. He came over on a Wednesday evening. Claire was polite but quiet. She went upstairs after about 20 minutes to help Lily with something, which I understood as her way of giving us space. Ryan and I sat in the living room, and he was acting strange. Not dramatically strange, just slightly off. He was laughing a little too easily at nothing. He kept checking his phone. And at one point, when I started talking about the Chicago trip, I watched a very specific expression move across his face and then disappear. Just for half a second, like something flickered behind his eyes and he put it out quickly. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. After he left, I sat with that image for a long time, that flicker. Because here's the thing about Ryan. Ryan had gone through a brutal divorce 2 years earlier. His ex-wife, a woman named Stacy, had left him for someone from her office, and it had demolished him. He was not himself for almost a year. He leaned on me a lot during that period. I drove to his apartment more times than I can count. I sat with him through nights that got pretty dark, and I was glad to do it. He's my brother. That's what you do. But the divorce had also changed him in ways I was still figuring out. He'd become harder to read. He dated a lot more, or tried to, and sometimes I'd catch something in the way he talked about Claire, or about our marriage that I couldn't quite name. Not anything obvious. Just a tone that didn't sit right. I pushed it away. He was my brother. The next day, something else happened. I ran into our neighbor Daniel at the gas station around the corner. Daniel and his wife Kate live 3 houses down, and we've been friendly for about 5 years. Backyard conversations over the fence, that kind of thing. Daniel stopped me in the parking lot and asked, kind of casually, kind of not, if everything was okay at home. He said Kate had mentioned that Claire seemed a little off the last couple of times they talked. I thanked him and said we were fine, just stressed with work. But on the drive home, I kept thinking about that. How had Kate picked up on something that quickly? What had Claire said to her? I talked to Claire that night, and she admitted she'd told Kate about the bra. Not the full story, but enough. She was embarrassed about it, she said. She just needed to tell someone. I understood. I wasn't angry. But now the circle of people who knew was wider, and that made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't fully explain. I started thinking harder, retracing the Chicago trip in my mind with more purpose this time, like I was actually investigating something rather than just trying to remember. I thought about every moment that jacket was out of my hands or out of my sight, and I kept coming back to one specific moment. The conference dinner was at a restaurant about 2 blocks from the hotel. It was a nicer place. There was a coat check. I checked my jacket when I arrived. I got it back when I left. Standard. Except that when I picked up my jacket at the end of the night, there was a slight delay. The attendant had to search for it for a moment. He said there'd been a mix-up with the tag. He apologized. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I was thinking about it. I also thought about the morning I left the jacket on the back of my chair. That 2-hour session. People moving in and out. The room was not small. Anyone could have walked past. I started to wonder if the bra had been placed there on purpose. Deliberately. Not an accident, not a weird coincidence, but actually placed there by someone who knew it would end up coming home with me. Someone who knew Claire would eventually go through that pocket. Someone who knew exactly what she would think. The question was who and why. I spent 2 days quietly making a list of every person who had been in that room during the conference session. Most of them were colleagues I knew professionally. None of them had any connection to my life outside of work. But as I was going through my conference photos on my phone, double-checking who I remembered seeing that day, I found one that stopped me cold. It was a wide shot someone had taken of the full session room. Candid, from the back, and in the corner, standing near the door, slightly out of focus but recognizable to me, was Ryan. My brother was at that conference. He had never told me he was there. I held my phone and just breathed for a minute. Because Ryan works in logistics, not in my field at all, there was no reason for him to be at a financial services conference in Chicago. No professional reason anyway. I called him immediately, and when he picked up, I didn't lead with anything. I just said, "Hey, were you in Chicago in October?" The pause before he answered was about 2 seconds too long. "Chicago? No. Why?" "I'm looking at a photo from the conference I attended. I think I see you in the background." Another pause. It could be someone who looks like me. That happens." "Ryan." He was quiet. "I need you to be honest with me right now," I said, "because something happened after I got back from that trip, and I think it involves you, and I need to understand what is going on." And that's when he broke. Not dramatically, just quietly, like air leaving something that had been holding too much pressure for too long. He had been in Chicago. He had followed me there. "Not in a sinister way," he said. "Not exactly. He had a friend in the city he'd been planning to visit, and when he found out I was going to be there for the conference, he thought he'd check in on me, just to make sure." "Make sure of what?" I asked. And that's when he told me about the woman at my office. A colleague named Michelle who had, apparently, been telling people, including Ryan, through a mutual connection, that she and I were involved, that we'd been involved for months, that I was planning to leave Claire. None of it was true, not a single word of it. But Ryan had believed it, or at least he'd believed enough of it to go to Chicago to see it for himself. He said he felt like he owed it to Claire to know the truth before he said anything to anyone. He followed me for most of the first day of the conference, watching from a distance. He saw me at the conference dinner. He saw me leave alone. He said by the end of that day, he was starting to believe the rumors were wrong. But then Michelle had approached him. She'd somehow known Ryan was there. I still don't entirely understand how she made that connection. And she'd given him something and told him to put it in my jacket pocket at the coat check. She said it was to see what would happen. She said if I was innocent, it would all sort itself out. Ryan, who was confused and emotionally tangled up in a situation he had no business being in, had done it. He'd bribed the coat check attendant, or rather the attendant had been careless, and the bra had ended up in my pocket. He swore to me that he hadn't intended to destroy my marriage, that he thought he was, I don't even know what he thought, that he was gathering information, that he was looking out for his sister-in-law, that he was doing the right thing in some completely backward way. I sat on the phone with him for a long time and said very little, and then I went and talked to Claire. I told her everything, all of it. Ryan, the conference, Michelle, the coat check, the bra, the reason, the whole story. I didn't soften it. I didn't protect Ryan. I just told her exactly what had happened from the beginning to the moment we were sitting there. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Your brother did this," she said finally. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Because he believed rumors." "Yes." She nodded very slowly, and I could see the anger in her, controlled and precise, and I knew it was not going to go away quickly. She called Ryan herself, that same evening. I wasn't in the room for it. I sat in the kitchen and listened to the low sound of her voice from the hallway, and I didn't try to hear the words. When she came back, she sat down across from me and said, "He's not welcome here for a while." I agreed. As for Michelle, I went to HR the following Monday. I laid out everything I knew. The rumors, the way she'd used Ryan, the deliberate placement of the bra, the attempt to destabilize my marriage. It was a formal complaint. I don't know exactly what conversations happened after that, but Michelle was gone from that office within 3 weeks. I was told it was a mutual separation. I didn't push for more than that. I just needed her out of my professional life. Ryan and I have talked since then, several times. He's apologized more than I can count, and I believe he's genuinely sorry, but belief and forgiveness are two different things on different timelines. He made a choice that could have ended my marriage based on a rumor from a woman with an agenda he didn't bother to question. That's not something I've fully processed yet. Some days I feel like I understand it. Other days I look at what Claire and I went through that week, the silence and the careful eyes in the ice I was walking across. And I feel something sharp and complicated that I don't have a clean name for yet. Claire and I are still working through it. Not just the week of the bra, but the whole thing. What it means that a rumor like that could exist. What it means that people in our lives were willing to act on it. We're back in counseling, not because we're in crisis, but because we learned 3 years ago that talking to someone helps. And this felt like a time to use that tool again. Some nights we talk about it. Some nights we watch something on television, and it's just us on the couch and the sound of the kids upstairs and the house settling. And it's fine. It's real. It's ours. And I know that what someone tried to take from us, they didn't get. I found that photo, and that mattered. One grainy wide-angle shot of a conference room with my brother standing in the corner, hoping I wouldn't notice him. That was the thread. One thread, pulled at the right moment, and the whole thing unraveled. I think about how easy it would have been to never look at that photo, to have simply accepted the silence between Claire and me as the new shape of things, to have let someone else's plan write the ending of our story. But that's not what happened. Thank you for sitting with this one all the way to the end. It wasn't an easy story to tell. If it moved you, if it made you think, if there was even one moment where you genuinely weren't sure what was happening, then it did what it was supposed to do. Like this, if it was worth your time. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. And in the comments, I want to know, what would you have done? If you were me, sitting in that kitchen with no answer and a bra you'd never seen before, what would you have done? And if you were Claire trying to hold yourself together and trust someone while every instinct was screaming at you, what would you have done? Tell me. I read everything.